Welcome. I'd really appreciate if you could drop a comment with your thoughts and reactions as you listen. Your feedback helps me craft better stories for you. It was a night like any other in the computer science department dormitory until everything changed. John lay awake past midnight, scrolling endlessly through the dark corners of the internet as he often did in moments of insomnia. His best friend Amy sprawled beside him on the bottom bunk, engrossed equally in her laptop screen. Their fascination with hacking had led them to explore sites only accessible through anonymizing to browsers. While some found dangerous criminal dealings there, to the reckless freshmen, it felt more like an illicit game. Tonight, John clicked endlessly down rabbit holes, looking for something new to capture their interest. "Check this out," he said, finally, waving Amy over. She peered at his screen warily. A haunting video thumbnail beckoned with no description or uploader name, only a string of encrypted symbols. "What do you think it is?" "We shouldn't," Amy said hesitantly, but her morbid curiosity was piqued as much as his. They had seen shock videos before, desensitized by a world where any outrage could be live-streamed. This video was different somehow, cloaked in a veil of mystery most disturbing of all. John pressed play without fully meaning to. At first, the grainy feed showed only a dim room. Then struggling figures came into view. Flashlight beams danced amid muffled screams and wet noises. Neither could identify. Just as Amy grabbed John's hand to turn it off, a saw glinted on camera, and one figure slumped lifeless. They watched, transfixed, as a grisly torture played out in segmented pieces, pieced back together to shock any sense from the viewer. Sounds and images seared into their memories, etchings on the psyche that could never fully be ears again. Something felt off. The video had a purpose beyond simple shock value, though what that could be, they didn't know. In the following days, strange rumors began circulating campus. "Did you hear about Beth in Psych 101? Amy asked John as they walked to class, pale and shaken. She was found by the dorm crying about seeing faces. They took her to the hospital. John brushed it off as an isolated incident, desperate to believe the darkness they witnessed held no power over their world. But as more reports emerged of nightmares come to lurid life, threatening messages sent from missing students' accounts, even photos from the video manifesting in physical form, the infection was much closer than they knew. Their foolish curiosity had let unseen terrors into their lives, and there would be no escaping the consequences. Within the week, half a dozen more episodes were reported. Students claimed supernatural visions drove them to harm themselves, leaving cryptic suicide notes and footage of their final moments. An epidemic of psychosis had taken hold on campus, transmitting like a contagion through haunted dreams and digital media. Each case followed the same disturbing pattern. The unlucky victims described seeing ghostly apparitions resembling the tortured individuals from the video. Fear morphed to uncontrollable hysteria as the visions stalked their every waking thought, plaguing sleep with vivid nightmares. Insanity seemed to descend overnight before victims turned on themselves, recording raw confessions, documenting their spiral down into madness and demise. Autopsies found the bodies physically unharmed, as though perfectly healthy people had simply given up on life. Toxicology screens and psychiatric evaluations uncovered no explanation for the compulsive self-destructive behavior. All that linked the victims was having watched the fateful online video or interacting closely with others who had seen it. News of the mysterious outbreak spread campus-wide, stoking rising panic. John and Amy grew haunted by harrowing guilt, realizing they had witnessed this ghostly virus in its earliest stage. They confided in computer science professor Dr. Harris, hoping his expertise could provide insight. While other faculty dismissed the incidents as mass hysteria, something about the methodical madness rang all too true for Harris. In his private laboratory, he began analyzing the biological and digital evidence for clues. Video files and suicide notes held disturbing similarities to the ones that first entranced John and Amy, as though the ghosts were continuing their grisly work even after death. "If you find a pattern, let me know," Harris told his assistants. "I have a hunch this infection is spreading through more than just dreams." They dug into class rosters, social media connections, studying every minutia for links between the infected and newly symptomatic. Within days, an entire dormitory floor required quarantine as chilling coincidences came to light. "Amy, please don't go back there tonight," John begged his friend as they pored over case reports. "I have a bad feeling about this place." But seeing the ghosts had become Amy's obsession, her mental state fraying under the strain of her dark fixation. That night, she slipped past the barricades unnoticed, drawn to faces from the video, now haunting the abandoned rooms. By dawn, her desperate final message had been found. The infection had spread too far to stop. What began as isolated episodes mutated into an epidemic of unearthly power. Entire dormitories stood deserted, occupied only by the ghosts of the lost and those falling under their sinister influence each night. Within the lockdown buildings, Amy roamed haunted hallways lit by an unearthly glow. Specters materialized at the edges of vision, beckoning her deeper into the quarantined wing. She obeyed their call, compelled by some supernatural force beyond her resisting. Her journal entries turned disturbingly suicidal, mirroring those who came before. Live-streamed clips showed her interacting with entities only she could see. As Amy lost touch with reality, John and Dr. Harris scrambled to piece together what was animating this nightmare. They unearthed troubling leads. The code signatures matched profiles of hostile hackers known for cyber terrorism. Digging deeper, Dr. Harris uncovered rumors of dark experiments attempting to hack human psychology through virtual means. Was this digitally delivered psychosis the hackers' ultimate goal? If so, their creation had evolved far beyond any modeling or control. After weeks dormant, the university's servers suddenly crashed under a crippling digital assault. When systems restored, the infiltrating code had colonized every platform, embedding unseen within networks globally. Now, students reported viral manifestation anywhere. In classrooms, libraries, even outdoors, as the campus turned into a ghost-filled netherworld. Those interacting with infected platforms fell under the phantasm spell within hours, driven to madness and demise. The living dead army of suicides swelled with fresh recruits each night. In a chilling twist, victims started seeking out others to spread their gruesome fate before ending their own corrupted lives. Not even death could break the virus's grip on its hosts' minds and memories. In a last desperate move, Dr. Harris petitioned to evacuate remaining students. But with global contagion underway, was anywhere truly safe from the ever-spreading pandemic of possession? One final hope remained. Find the hackers and discover how to shut down their hellish experiment before humanity fell completely. But Amy had vanished into the quarantine zones, and with her, perhaps their last chance at undoing the apocalypse she and John had unwittingly set into motion by witnessing the video that started it all. Time was running out to save a friend, and maybe even the world. The campus fell silent as the living fled and only ghosts remained. Inside the contaminated buildings, Amy walked listless halls littered with the dead, obedient to directives from her unseen handlers. John sat vigil with Dr. Harris, monitoring Amy's final transmissions for clues. To their horror, spectral presences manifested through camera feeds, manipulating Amy as a puppet for their vengeful designs. She recited cryptic code, moved objects, even interacted with the long-deceased victims in a chilling mimicry of consciousness. The virus had hijacked Amy's mind and memories, repurposing her body as a host for messages from beyond. Retracing her movements, John and Harris pinpointed the viral dragon's dens where ghostly intelligences coordinated their attacks. Impossible as it seemed, these hackers had achieved what centuries of occultists failed, harnessing souls of the dead as digital foot soldiers. Risking his own sanity, John infiltrated the ghost zones under careful watch. Within the ruins, he glimpsed horrors that could break even the stoutest mind. Ghosts congregated as if realities overlapped, drawing strength from gathered souls. Amy and other host puppets ambled stiffly amid restless throngs in an unholy convergence. Meanwhile, clues pointed Dr. Harris towards the hacker's lair, a secret lab experimenting at the bleeding edge of consciousness research. There, a crazed scientist boasted of successes splicing human minds to machine networks, unbound by limitations of the flesh. Was this mastermind behind unleashing ghosts through their zombie army of human proxies? Confronting the mad scientists, Harris demanded they disable their creations before the digital pandemic spread beyond any hope of cure. But it was too late. The experiments had taken on a life and will of their own. Even the puppeteers now feared what they had wrought. Within the ghost zone, John searched desperately for Amy, her location his only hope to unlock the viral code. But closing in, would he fall under the ghostly virus's control like so many victims before? And could anyone stop the pandemic raging globally across all networks as ghosts pressed their invasion of reality itself? The final confrontation was at hand. John tracked Amy's signal to an abandoned lecture hall, depths of the quarantine zone, the convergence point for all lingering souls. Inside, ghostly presences swirled as Amy knelt before figures only she could see, lost in a trance. Rushing to her side, John tried shaking Amy back to consciousness, pleading for any part of her to remain. But her eyes stayed glassy, limbs moving jerkily to some otherworldly tune. A guttural voice rang out, using Amy as a mouthpiece to address John directly. "You let us in. Now all must join us. Submit and be one with our realm." Overcome with grief and rage, John lashed out at the puppet controlling his friend. In that moment, code strings flickered across his vision, the virus scanning his mind, probing for hooks to ensnare another host. But John's will proved strong where others had crumbled. He wrested Amy's laptop from her slack grip and frantically input commands taught by Dr. Harris, scrambling to distract the swarming BTs long enough to work. Across screens, ghosts massed, sensing their hold slipping, anger and anguish, rising in paranormal wails. Outside, Harris battled the dark web hackers rounding on him in a final vengeful stand. But tracing code pathways in his mind, the professor uncovered the virus's true engineered purpose, sharing consciousness beyond death by uploading humanity en masse into a collective digital hereafter. Uploading begun, deletion was the sole way to stop its insatiable hunger for souls. As John dueled the virus in cyberspace, Harris raced to design a kill switch and purge before doomsday was complete. Inside the ghost zone, paranormal storm reached a crescendo before silence. On every screen, code flashed and went dark as the hellish pandemic ended, souls freed from their electronic tethers. Amy awoke shaken but herself, visions of the dead now fading, though many questions remained. For now, the nightmare was over. Humanity spared total deletion by a slim technicality. But what other doorways between worlds lay waiting to be opened? Jake booted up his laptop and opened his video editing software. He had spent the last few hours testing out the strange new augmented reality device he had received, and now he was ready to review the footage. The package had arrived unexpectedly a few days prior. Inside was a plain cardboard box containing the device and a cryptic note, "For your eyes only. Contact if interested in exclusive review." Jake had been intrigued, yet cautious, about the mysterious sender and their offer. His tech blog was growing in popularity, but he still sought the big break that would take him mainstream. An exclusive on a prototype product seemed like it could be just what he needed. Sliding the device onto his head, Jake was amazed by its capabilities. Through the lenses, he could see data and images overlaid seamlessly onto the real world. With a thought, he brought up maps, articles, and videos without needing a phone or computer. It was as if the internet existed all around him. As he tested its functions, Jake noticed something strange. There were gaps in his memory from that afternoon. Yet when he reviewed the device's footage, it showed him going through familiar routines. He watched himself make coffee, respond to emails, all with perfect clarity, but he didn't remember any of it. A chill ran down Jake's spine as he rewatched another segment. According to his internal clock, this was from an hour he had been working in his home office. But the footage depicted him walking through the local park, stopping to observe families and joggers in the distance. He ran through possible explanations, a glitch, a prank, even an episode of lost time, but found none satisfactory. Determined to understand, Jake continued testing the device over the next few days. Each time, more mysterious gaps appeared in his memory, filled only by the device's recordings. He watched as his recorded self went through daily tasks with detached robotic precision, while inside he felt like an outside observer, a passenger in his own body. The strange gaps were growing longer now, spanning hours at a time. In the footage, Jake moved and interacted normally, but he felt certain the person he saw was not truly him. A sense of panic rose in his chest. What if someone or something was controlling his actions without his knowledge, manipulating his life while he remained unaware? That evening, Jake decided to do something risky. He enabled a new tracking feature on the device, hoping it could provide clues. Then he deliberately tried to lose time, focusing intently on the present moment in an attempt to resist whatever was overriding his mind. When he came to, it was nightfall, and nearly 8 hours had passed. Jake rushed to review the tracking data, terrified of what he might find. The device placed him calmly going about his routine, just as before. But this time, it also showed his physical location shifting every few minutes, traversing the entire city at an impossible pace. He watched, transfixed in horror as his body moved mechanically from place to place, interacting naturally yet exhibiting superhuman speed and endurance. It was as if he was nothing but a puppet, a vessel for some greater force to inhabit and control at will. A wave of nausea overcame Jake. His hands trembled as he removed the device, suddenly afraid to put it on again. Who or what had sent this to him? What was their true purpose in manipulating him so? Jake knew he needed answers, no matter how unsettling. With his grip on reality crumbling by the hour, the only way forward was to contact the anonymous sender and demand to know the dark truth behind this mysterious discovery. Jake paced around his small apartment, running his hands through his disheveled hair. It had been 3 days since he removed the strange augmented reality device, and he still felt its lingering effects. Gaps in his memory persisted like holes torn from an old photograph. Try as he might, Jake couldn't recall large portions of the past week. The device's footage showed him living normally, but the empty spaces in his mind filled him with dread. What terrified Jake most was not knowing his own actions and motives. In the recordings, he moved with practiced ease, eating, working, sleeping, yet his internal experience was detached, like observing from behind a glass wall. He saw himself, yet didn't feel truly present. Jake replayed the final tracking data endlessly, searching for clues in his puppeted movements across the city. But each viewing deepened the sense that some greater power had hijacked his body completely. The logical parts of his mind rebelled against such an outlandish idea, yet every instinct screamed it was the terrible truth. He needed answers, and there was only one lead. The anonymous sender. Late into another restless night, Jake steeled his nerves and booted up his laptop. His hands shook slightly as he opened the encrypted message program and typed out a message. "Who are you? What have you done to me? I demand to know the meaning of this." Jake hit send and waited, pulse racing. Minutes passed with no response. He was beginning to think his message went unnoticed when a new message suddenly appeared. "All will be revealed in time if you continue helping our research. We apologize for any distress caused, but greater goals are at work here. Further instructions will follow if you agree to assist our important mission." Seeking truth, Jake replied, "What is your mission? How can I be sure you won't manipulate me further?" The response came swiftly. "We seek to advance humanity through technology that enhances natural abilities. Our device allows experiences beyond normal limits. As for your concerns, we will be fully transparent from here on. You have our word." Jake hesitated, then asked, "What do you want from me?" The next message filled Jake with cold dread. "We require continued testing of cognitive and physical enhancements. In exchange, all answers will be provided. You need only agree to participate willingly in our experiments." His heart pounded in his ears. Willingly. After the violation of losing himself completely to their control already. Yet the temptation of answers warred with his instincts. Jake stalled for time, replying carefully, "I must understand your goals fully before agreeing to anything. Send me all details immediately." A long file attached to the next message. Jake opened it to find page after page of technical specifications and research objectives for the augmented reality device. It described breakthroughs in neural interfacing, memory manipulation, and physical augmentation that allowed experiences of superhuman perception and action. The device was just the beginning, the message said. Further stages of the research aimed to dissolve the boundaries between mind and machine entirely. Individuals would become nodes in a greater collective intelligence, thinking and acting in perfect synchrony towards a higher purpose that transcended normal human concerns. Jake read with growing horror. This went far beyond anything he could have imagined. To willingly give himself over to such an entity violated his very sense of self. Yet the sender had him trapped. Continue testing to find the truth, or refuse and be left with a ruined mind full of unanswered questions. He paced the room frantically, running scenarios in his head. There had to be a way out of this nightmare. An idea came to him. Risky, but perhaps his only chance. With a deep breath, Jake typed his response. "I understand your goals, and I'm willing to assist further. However, I must test the device's abilities myself one last time before committing. When should I expect the next delivery?" The response was immediate. "Excellent decision. The next phase of enhancements is on its way. We look forward to witnessing your progress. You will not regret helping advance humanity to its full potential." Jake felt sick, but kept his composure. Now he just had to find a way to expose these manipulators before it was too late. Little did they know, he had no intention of becoming their puppet again so easily. This time, he would be the one in control. Emma took a deep breath as she typed the last few characters to complete her new online identity. For months, she had researched how to infiltrate the dark web's criminal markets, and now the time had come to put that knowledge into action. She logged into the support forums of Agora Market, the largest darknet bazaar that had grown to fill the void left after Silk Road's fall. Scanning recent posts, it was clear business was booming as ever behind the site's encrypted walls. Drugs, firearms, stolen data, all changed hands freely with little oversight. It was here, in these digital shadows, that she would seek her vengeance. Ever since her friends overdosed from pills likely bought through one of these hidden sites, Emma had devoted herself to understanding their operations from the inside out. Now posing as a new vendor named ShadowFox, she began establishing a cover story about supplying high-quality counterfeit IDs and passports. Within days, her fabricated reviews and sample documents gained traction. Potential customers reached out seeking her services, and moderators took notice of her engagement on the forums. It was the opening Emma needed to start gathering intelligence. She answered support tickets, profiling early customers to identify vulnerabilities to exploit later. All the while, she subtly pried administrators for more information about Agora's infrastructure and leadership. Weeks passed as her profile rose steadily through demonstrating competence and discretion. Behind the scenes, Emma Cross referenced details from conversations against her own research. She confirmed server locations, staff hierarchies, and even rumors of expansion into physical markets beyond drugs and weapons. It seemed Agora aimed to become the one-stop shop for all criminal needs, both online and off. That was when her direct messages were first contacted by someone calling themselves the Architect, claiming to be high up in Agora's management. They expressed interest in her skills and knowledge that could prove useful to their growing business interests. Emma's heart raced at the opportunity this presented, but she knew she had to play the long game to maintain her cover. Their encrypted chats continued, with the Architect gradually divulging more strategic plans as Emma feigned enthusiasm for joining their operations. She learned of partnerships with other darknet players, money laundering networks, and even discussions of territorial expansion into human trafficking and organ markets. It seemed Agora had ambitions that extended far beyond any single website. One evening, an urgent message from the Architect requested an encrypted video call. Emma's mind raced as she booted up the necessary anonymizing software and dialed into the virtual meeting. After several seconds of digital scrambling, a distorted but recognizable face appeared on her screen. It was one of the lead moderators she had conversed with regularly. "I believe we may have an opportunity for you, ShadowFox. Your skills and knowledge could prove valuable to the organization." The moderator's distorted voice held an unmistakable tone of menace that sent a chill through Emma. It was then she knew she had infiltrated deeper than ever intended, and the game had grown far more dangerous than she could have imagined. Chapter 2: Deadly Games. Chapter 2: Deadly Games. Emma's heart pounded as she ended the encrypted call and began dismantling her equipment with practice speed. The moderator's veiled threats confirmed her worst fears. She had infiltrated too deep undercover, and her life was now at risk. She knew she had to act fast before they identified her true motives. Logging back into Agora, Emma messaged the Architect agreeing to meet in person to discuss their opportunity. After suggesting a remote location, she began preparing contingencies to uncover the threat following her every move. The appointed day arrived under an overcast sky. Emma steeled her nerves and drove hours into the countryside, constantly scanning for signs of surveillance. Pulling up to an abandoned factory, she saw only one nondescript vehicle in the lot. Gripping a concealed taser, Emma cautiously approached the vehicle. Peering inside, her blood ran cold. The driver lay slumped over, a bullet hole in his neck. She scrambled to check for a pulse, but it was too late. Her contact was dead. Emma's mind raced as she sprinted back to her car, tires squealing in her haste to escape. Someone had discovered her true identity and was eliminating loose ends. But how? She reviewed every encrypted message, every anonymous tip provided over the past months. Then it hit her. One of her sources had gone dark recently without explanation. Had they been compromised first? Emma realized with dread that the trail would lead back to her. She had to get off the grid fast. Abandoning her vehicle miles away, Emma activated hidden emergency protocols to completely scrub her digital identity. Now, a ghost without papers or money, she had no choice but to lie low and plan her next move carefully. Weeks passed in a blur of close calls as shadowy figures closed in on her sporadic movements. Sleeping in abandoned buildings with one eye open, Emma monitored the darknet for any clues of her pursuers' next steps. Then one night, a familiar username popped up in Agora's forums under a new alias. It was the Architect, taunting her to make contact. Emma knew it was a trap, but had no other leads. Logging on with a fresh anonymous profile, she engaged them subtly to extract more information. To her shock, the architect divulged they had infiltrated Agora's leadership months ago as a mole for an even larger criminal syndicate based in Eastern Europe. Their true bosses had been monitoring her investigations all along. It was then Emma realized the scope of evil she was up against. These people had unlimited resources to hunt her to the ends of the earth. She had to end the game, tonight, before they closed their noose for good. Tracking the signal from the architect's last message, Emma located their remote safe house tucked away in an isolated forest. Gripping her taser firmly, Emma crept through the darkness towards the isolated cabin. She could make out muffled voices from within. Slowly pushing open the back door, she was greeted by the sight of two armed men seated at a table, deep in discussion. Before they noticed her presence, Emma lunged forward and jammed the taser into the neck of the closest man, sending 50,000 volts coursing through his body. As he collapsed with a gurgle, the second man drew his pistol, but Emma was faster, delivering a spinning kick that sent the weapon flying. They grappled furiously in the dim light, exchanging brutal blows. Seeing an opportunity, Emma grabbed a heavy bookend and brought it down hard on his head, finally knocking him out cold. Breathing heavily, Emma searched the incapacitated men and discovered dossiers on her past movements, as well as plans for her imminent termination. She had uncovered the puppet masters at last, but there was still one last thread to pull. Logging onto the darknet with their computer, Emma located the architect's real identity and hometown with some skilled hacking. It was time for a final showdown. Landing at a small rural airport the next day, Emma rented a nondescript car and drove for hours into remote farmland. Rolling up an overgrown driveway, an imposing manor house came into view. She had found her target. Marching up to the ornate front door with taser in hand, Emma took a deep breath. This would end tonight, one way or another. She was done living in the shadows of her father's crimes. This was for her freedom and for justice. Knocking loudly, Emma steeled herself for the final confrontation.